Hi, everyone. My name is Jen Arbo, and I'm with the City of New Westminster. And tonight you are at the first business education night. And this particular one, we're jumping off into a really big topic, which is vulnerable people and homelessness impacts on businesses in New Westminster. So I'd like to first begin by giving a land acknowledgement. It's an important for us to really remember where we are. And the City of New Westminster recently was able to put together this land acknowledgement, and I'm really happy to be able to give it. So we recognize and respect that New Westminster is on the unceded and unsurrendered land of the Halkomelin speaking people. We acknowledge that colonialism has made invisible their histories and connections to the land. And as a city, and me personally, we are learning and building relationships with the people whose land we are on. So tonight, joining me, I have two of my colleagues along for the ride, and I'm going to ask them both to introduce themselves. So with me tonight, I have Constable Camille Oliveira, and she's going to introduce herself. And I also have Varn, who's our Tenant Support Coordinator and Bylaw Officer at the City of New West. So Camille, you can go first.
Thank you very much, Jen. Thank you for inviting me and putting this great project together. My name is Constable Camille. I'm a police officer here in New West. I've been in the police department just short of 25 years, and I have the pleasure of being the very first vulnerable persons liaison officer here in New West. My portfolio is seniors, diverse ability clients, and are homeless in our community.
And go ahead, Val.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you again, Jen, for inviting me as also. My name is Varn. I am a bylaw officer with the City of New Westminster, and I specialize with tenant support coordination for the rental bylaw. I also work with Camille and two other bylaw officers full-time to tackle the homelessness and vulnerable people in New Westminster.
Thanks. I'm so glad you could both make it. Like I said, this is our first business education night. We will be doing future ones. And if you stay tuned to the end of the presentation, we'll let you know what some of those topics will be. But I do encourage you that if you have specific topics that you'd like for me to tackle and help find speakers through all of the staff at City of New Westminster, you are welcome to reach out to me. You can reach me at my email address, which you will get in a follow-up email after this session, but it's jarbo, which is JARBO at newscity.ca. And that's the best way to get in touch with me. And I'm more than happy to connect you or to come up with topics for our future business education nights. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. And I'm also going to change the recording so that it's just presenter view. So whichever one of us happens to be speaking is who will be on the recording. So, like I said, welcome to our first business education night. We are the three of us. So we've introduced ourselves. Look at this, we're already just wrapping through it. It's great. So here's our agenda tonight. We're going to provide a little bit of information in the context of homelessness in New Westminster, just to give you kind of some context of where we're at, what's happening. What do our numbers look like, and what are sort of policies and what are limitations around what we're allowed to do legally, and then what we're also doing proactively within the city, different divisions. We're going to outline some strategies and who you can call if there's something that's, whether it's us or perhaps it's another agency within the city. We'll also look at some other resources. We're also going to talk a little bit about strategies and tips for de-escalation. We know that some of the interactions with some of our vulnerable and street entrenched folks can sometimes get a little bit testy. And so we do have some strategies and tips for de-escalation. Then, like I teased, we will also talk about what some of our future small business education topics are. And with this series, we're really hoping to tackle topics that are maybe a bit harder to talk about or maybe less common. So frequently what you'll see is things like marketing, or you'll see things like websites or social media. And we do have a whole series of education for that specifically. But these topics are a little bit different. This is about how a business can exist in the community that we're in. We'll also have lots of times for questions. And in terms of questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat. You can send them to me in a direct message if you're uncomfortable speaking up. You can raise your hand. I'll be watching for that. And you can also just hang on to them till the end, where there will be a question section at the end. So with that, I'm going to get going. So I'm going to turn this over to Camille, and she can kind of go through the context of what's happening here in New Westminster.
Well, thank you, Jen. So when looking at homelessness and the vulnerable person population here in New West, some of the general consistent concerns that we have as a police agency and as city as bylaws. These are some of the concerns that come forward on a consistent basis. Concerns about cleanliness and the general maintenance of the city as we move and work around our city. There's significant concerns regarding impacts on the business from our vulnerable and street entrenched population as they either come in to use the establishment or they're lingering either in doorways or lingering in front of the business. We get concerns about the impact of these people or individuals sleeping on private property or at storefronts. I get a lot of concerns regarding the consumption and selling of drugs in our community, especially on the streets. Encampments in our city and the unhoused individuals leaving mess and garbage behind in their belongings. And I do have a lot of business owners that come to me and want to talk about how can I be compassionate and understanding of our vulnerable population, interact with them. Can you give me the skills and understanding? But I also want to be fair that I am a business owner and have a business to run as well. So that very difficult juggling act between business and compassion and wanting to be successful in our community. So in 2020, in March, just before COVID happened, the City of New Westminster and the Homeless Coalition in New West did a homeless count. And at that time, we had an estimated 123 individuals who are living unsheltered in our city. And of that 123 that are sheltered and unsheltered, we believe and can confirm pretty much with our numbers in our emergency shelter that maybe 45 to 50 are living on the streets with no housing at all. With the advent of COVID, those numbers went through the roof, and we saw that initially during the beginning stages of the pandemic, where we saw more of our homeless out on the streets because a lot of the places that they would normally go for assistance and job losses and economic losses forced people to be out on the streets. So we're in a very difficult and changing time when dealing with our vulnerable population in the New West. So in New West, we are looking at a collaborative approach between my job here as a police constable and working with the city and our local service providers and our profit and nonprofit partners to approach the issue of homelessness and vulnerable persons with a collaborative approach. My day starts very early in the morning and I communicate with our service providers in the community, and we try and have that approach be consistent and compassionate at the same time. We as the city have collaborated with our partners at the city, such as Bylaws, general maintenance, and some of the other business economic development, providing context to what we do in a way that is compassionate, caring, but also addressing the social concerns that are there. We want to avoid the duplication of services. And we also want to work with external stakeholders such as businesses and, just as importantly, our nonprofit partners that work with our homelessness on a daily basis. So Jen, I'm going to turn this over to you since you're the queen of the downtown livability strategy. So this one's yours, my dear.
That's right. Yeah, for sure. So the downtown livability strategy it was brought about from our council. They put forward a motion in September asking staff to come back to them with a plan for how to address some of the emergent issues that were happening in the downtown area specifically. Some of the issues sort of happen in other areas, but it was sort of the compounding effect that really put sort of downtown under the microscope and is part of why there was a motion from council. Staff got together really quickly and put together a downtown livability plan, a downtown livability strategy. And a lot of it was just addressing the immediate and short-term needs. So this was things like garbage containers and the frequency of collection of garbage. A lot of stuff got done really quickly and is now operationalized. So if you are in the downtown area, you probably do see that there is increased garbage containers. One of the downsides of the pandemic is that many of our food service providers had to shift to a model where they were providing takeout containers to people who were coming to access food services. And so those takeout containers were being left on the street. So now there is an increased number of garbage containers, and the garbage is collected much more frequently. We actually have evening staff as well, who part of their job is to take care of garbage collection in the weekends and the evenings. We've also hired specialized waste removal services who help manage taking care of human waste, which is another big challenge that we did hear from the businesses, was something that needed to be addressed. We installed and have put in place a pretty robust maintenance plan for a portable toilet. You may have seen it, it's in Hyack Square, and that portable toilet is serviced every 2 hours with litter picking, and it's serviced at least once, if not twice a day, for actual like cleaning inside the toilet. There's been a couple of issues with it. It had to be replaced this past week due to a fire. We did also have to deal with the door got broken off at one point, but for the most part, it is being used as intended. There's sometimes misuse of it, but that's kind of, I think, standard for a portable toilet. We've also provided a good deal of funding for some homeless support workers. Those homeless support workers work kind of extended hours. They work trying to overlap the hours available at the Health Contact Center. And as well, we have recently gotten approval in the budget process to hire some additional bylaw officers who would also have extended hours of service. You know, this isn't an issue that's addressed Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So it's certainly something we acknowledge needs to have a kind of a more robust attack plan. Just a reminder for everyone that is on the line, if you wouldn't mind muting your phone, it would be really great. Camille mentioned that she does morning patrols, and I'm going to let Camille talk a little bit more about who joins her and what some of the considerations are for that.
So a lot of people ask, well, what does a vulnerable person liaison officer do? And my job is not enforcement based. My job is engagement based. It's based on bridging the gap between police and this vulnerable population. So my day begins very early in the morning before most people get up when the sun comes up. I start my day generally at 5 a.m. And during the summertime, sometimes it's even earlier when the sun is still down. As our vulnerable population moves through the community, I conduct morning patrols to engage and say good morning to our folks. And I'm very lucky that I am joined on Wednesdays and Thursdays with an outreach worker by the name of Justin. Justin is an individual with lived experience on the street who has come through the other side to become an outreach worker and engage with our vulnerable clientele to provide services and bridging that gap of communication and referral. And some of the things that I look for when I'm out in the community is exposure to the cold. As we've seen, especially over the Christmas period, it has been extremely cold for our vulnerable population. And at times we didn't have an emergency shelter. That has changed now, but some people don't survive within a shelter community. So some of our clientele still choose to be outside. So my first priority is their health and welfare. Are they safe? Are they warm, and have they survived the night? Right now, with our tainted drug supply and our opioid crisis, there is considerable concerns of overdose overnight. And I can tell you honestly that there has been occasions where I've come across people who have overdosed and I've had to administer naloxone. I've come across individuals who have not survived that overdose and have passed away first thing in the morning. So the other part is I do a mental health check. It is not uncommon within our vulnerable population to have individuals who have mental health issues that are either treated or untreated or brought on through the use of drugs and alcohol. A lot of our homeless on the streets have food sustainability issues. So I am lucky enough to have funding through grant money to have food and supplies in my van. So sometimes when individuals been very, very cold, I provide hats, I provide mittens, I provide a bite to eat. I provide socks, since socks and hands are something that are very common to be susceptible to frostbite. My role is to break down those barriers of individuals living on the street, reporting themselves to be a victim of violence. It's surprising for a lot of folks to learn that the predominance of violence within this community is much greater than any other. A good portion of our vulnerable population are Indigenous. So there are issues of multi-generational trauma and colonialization and issues of systemic racism. So my job is to bridge that gap, provide that helping hand so that those individuals that do need police assistance with that can come and report to us in a safe and a traumatically caring environment when they do report. A lot of folks ask, and especially business and residents ask, well, what are my lawful authorities? And these are the guidelines that I do my job over as a police officer. My job is to enforce the law, but I am only allowed to enforce the law what is prescribed by law. The first thing a lot of folks ask, well, I get phone calls from citizens reporting that we have some of our homeless and are vulnerable loitering in front of their store or on the streets. Why can't we just move them along? Unfortunately, simply standing with your shopping cart or your belongings in a public space or on a sidewalk is not a criminal offense. I don't have any lawful authority to move these individuals along. I can go in the morning, I can go and I can encourage them to go get breakfast at the Union Gospel Mission. But generally I take the approach that I'm here to support you. I'm your friend. Let's have a conversation. How did the night go? And let's begin our day. I am the firm street mom on the street. I have 3 teenage boys, and my folks on the street are like, just like peeps to me. They're my kids in a really different way. I'm firm but fair. I'm caring at the same time. I have a lot of phone calls that we get here at the police department are concerned about the open consumption of drugs in our community. And this is a very difficult balancing act for police officers. Traditionally, we've been very enforcement based and taking a very hard line when it comes to drugs in the community, in particular open consumption. But at this time, the Office of the Federal Prosecution in Canada has advised all police agencies that they will not be approving criminal charges for simple possession and open consumption on that street. That usage of drugs on the street is an issue of public health and addictions. It is not an issue of criminalization. And what that means in plain language is even if I were to arrest somebody using drugs in a public place outside, the Crown Council will not be proceeding with charges. They've made that very clear that this is a public health issue, and the opioid crisis reflects that with the amount of deaths that we're having with our tainted drug supply. I get many phone calls and calls for service regarding tents or structures in the community, and we have very specific case law regarding that. The Supreme Court of Canada very recently advised that city and public parkways are not an issue for police enforcement when it comes to tents. Case law indicates that we will not be asking vulnerable persons living in structures to leave parks and spaces between the hours of 7 p.m. and 9 a.m. These are public spaces that they can use to sleep in, but they must hopefully move by 9 a.m. in the morning. I don't have any authority lawfully otherwise. In the city of New Westminster, the primary authority for tents and living structures falls to bylaws. I also attend with our bylaw officers in the capacity of standing by and keeping the peace, just to make sure that everybody is safe. I cannot be involved, or any police officer cannot be involved in the removal of living structures. Once that structure or tent is out, that is like their home. They have an expectation of privacy in that home. Many times I get phone calls from private business owners and private residents when we have somebody either staying or putting a structure on private property. Again, as a police officer, I have to follow what is prescribed by law. We will stand by and keep the peace while the property owner asks the individual to leave. And should they refuse to leave, we may consider a ticket under the Trespass Act, which is the only lawful authority we have. We don't throw people in jail for being homeless. Homeless is a social issue. It's not a criminal offense. And this is Belle's turn now, talking about lawful authorities for bylaws.
Thank you. The direction we have from our city council and mayor is to approach all encounters with vulnerable populations with compassion and understanding. What we try to keep in mind every time we have an encounter is the trauma-informed approach is used. We, as bylaw officers, we try to connect individuals with services and our outreach workers. The city recently approved 2 outreach workers that work with us, but not exactly side by side with us. There is a process that we go through in the mornings. And so what we do is with multiple visits and encounters, we encourage whoever is camping or has a tent or is, vulnerable. We do approach them a few times in the day and encourage them to go to the UGM for breakfast, as Camille had mentioned, or lunch, or just to not move along, but to find something else to do in the daytime. If a tent is unoccupied at the time of a visit, after Camille's already been there earlier in the morning, we get notification. We go a few hours later. We leave a city notice in the area of the tent. We make sure that there's nobody inside. We make sure no one's sleeping or that no one's in harm in the tent. The city notice is left for removal of items that have been maybe left behind. And if the tent is not removed, we do reattend the next day to determine the next steps. And that's when we involve engineering operations with the city for cleanup. As bylaw officers, we don't have the authority to physically remove people or ask for identification. When we approach the tent, we try to build a rapport with that person. Sometimes we are successful and sometimes we are not. But we do our best to build that rapport. We do see the same people throughout the city, and we have a rapport with those certain individuals. Fines are not issued to vulnerable persons for just being in a park. Like Camille said earlier, if they have their tent down, they might have it up, but if it's down before 9 a.m. and they want to stay in the park, we don't have a problem with that. It's a public space. Tents and belongings are only removed by our engineering operations crew when requested, when all other strategies are exhausted. We do try to work with the individual to maybe condense their belongings or pack it up in a neat way and then keep it by them. But if no one's there, we do have it removed.
Hang on, this is the police slide. A number of folks in the community, whether they be residents or business owners, always have concerns on how to call the police and when to call the police. So we thought we would lay some of those concerns out and sort of give some direction. Everybody knows when to call 911, and that is when a crime is in progress, if the suspect on scene or is immediately fleeing the scene, and most importantly, if it is a current or imminent threat to personal property. This is a crime in progress. This is an absolute emergency. It's 911. A non-emergency call would be the crime has already been committed, the suspect has moved on, and there is no active threat to persons or property. I do know that the non-emergency line across the Lower Mainland has got some significant issues, and New Westminster is not the same. Our 911, our non-emergency line, is operated by ECOM, which is a service provider who provides non-emergency and 911 services to all police agencies. And just due to capacity, due to the opioid crisis and the COVID concerns, our non-emergency wait times are, I'll admit them, they're not fantastic. In fact, they are not great. Our senior management has been working with ECOM to change that. So that is a significant work in progress. In addition to calling 911 and the non-emergency line, we also have the ability, next slide, Jen, for individuals to do online reporting. And this is a good fit for those of you that are very digitally savvy. If you want to report property damage under $5,000 or graffiti or theft of anything that is stolen where there is no CCTV. So if you just go to www.newwestpolice.org, you can do online reporting. And if you're going to report an issue regarding homelessness in specific, you can call our bylaws number, and Val will continue on with the city end.
No problem. Thank you. Yes, please call bylaws. The number's there on the screen at 604-527-4657. It is monitored Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. Outside of those hours, please drop us an email and we will attend to it on their next working day. As I said before, we work as a team. We have engineering operations. So if there's any garbage that's left aside, if you did have someone maybe in the alcove of your business and they've left a bit of a mess, you can always call, or on the sidewalk, you can always call engineering operations at the number provided there, or the email, and we'll have a crew come by, a street crew come by. And they also manage the portable toilet at Hyatt Square. And I believe they do 2 cleans a day. And they're constantly around. So you can also use ClickFix. It's our public app, and it's a good choice. And the calls get funneled out to the appropriate departments.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great choice if it's a non-time sensitive issue. And especially if you're just out walking and you see something and there might be like a photo to attach to it, it's really helpful for staff to see those photos. I'll mention this. So the Nuisance Activity Resource Guide is a guide that we put together as a response earlier on in the pandemic, and it provides some information, things like if there's garbage, if there's needles, if there's, if you're having troubles with someone leaving, food containers all over the place. It primarily covers, what to do with garbage and who to report it to, especially if it's garbage that might be sort of a health issue. So like needles or razors or other sort of drug paraphernalia. I wanted to mention, and I did mention at the beginning, but just to make sure that everyone did hear it, all of these resources will be sent tomorrow, including links to these different information sheets. This one will be undergoing an update probably in the next month or so. Not that there's anything outdated, but I just have additional information to add to it. We also have the business license holder resource guide, and this is a guide that was developed last year. It's relatively new in that all new business license holders are given it, either a digital version or a printed version. Those of you who have a business license from a number of years ago or even more than a year ago weren't given this, but I am doing my best to get it out to all businesses. And it really does have like a huge amount of information about who you contact, whether you're looking for a sign permit or a special event license, or you want to know where you can download open data. But it is also a really, really helpful sort of at a glance document to help business owners find the right people. And I'm also always here for businesses as well. The Economic Development Division is always available to help or to direct to whomever is the right person. There are some other community resources that we wanted to let you know about, specifically around used needles. So there's 2 that will come and actually pick up a used needle. You don't have to touch it at all. You just phone them up and say, here's where it is, and they will send someone out to pick it up. The Eyes on the Street program is a micro cleaning program that provides employment to vulnerable people as well. They do pick up some needles as well. You can email them. It's letter I, eyesonthestreet@gmail.com. They have a crew that works in Uptown, Downtown, and Saperton. We also wanted to mention the Emergency Extreme Weather Shelter. This is a place you could direct people to if you needed to direct them somewhere. So anything below 2 degrees, the Emergency Extreme Weather Shelter is mobilized. It operates from 8 p.m. until 8 a.m. and offers a warm bed, coffee, and donuts. And it's in the Army and Navy, but the entrance is on Front Street. It is operated by the Purpose Society, who also operate the Health Contact Center. So there's a number of things at the Health Contact Center. So that's harm reduction, safe consumption. It's an overdose prevention site, lots of resources for folks, and that's at 40 Begbie Street. And I'm gonna let Camille announce this one.
So one of the initiatives that we're looking at within the Westminster Police Department is looking at ways to uniquely address the concerns of business owners in our community, increase our engagement. And this was my baby. I put this together. It is an evening where you get to spend with the police department and the BIA, and it's a community forum. We want to improve dialogue. We want to discuss our community crime trends that are going on in our community and community policing issues and concerns. And it will happen every other month starting in April, and we'll send the information and guide out to everybody. And we hope to see you there. We also have the same project with our residents. It's called Community Policing Committee, but this one is specifically to business owners, to have you have an opportunity to have your contact with police. At these meetings will be myself, my partner, who will be joining us very shortly, Constable Suchan, our Inspector of Patrol, Inspector Dudar, and our Community Crime Prevention Coordinator. And we hope to see you there. We'll send out the invites, and we'll see you in April. And we hope to make this a dialogue and a discussion that we can have every other month.
So I'm just going to pause there to make sure that there's no questions before we move on to the next section, talking about building rapport and some de-escalation tips. Like I said, if you do have a question, you're welcome to use the raise hand function. You can put it in the chat. And if you don't, we'll just keep going. It's okay. You can also save your questions for the end. Angela, you're welcome to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, thank you very much, and really enjoyed this so far. I'm curious, the food sustainability where Officer Camille hands out stuff, can we donate things to that, or is that just your budget?
You can absolutely donate. The only thing that it cannot be perishable. I only have a community van. I don't have a fridge or storage facilities. But at the end of this presentation, you can have my email, and we'll arrange time for donations. I'm already very fortunate that I have donations that come in from very surprising sources. I have TELUS that provides a group of senior citizens that knit hats and toques for me. It's
Right.
wonderful. They tell us donates the yarn, and these ladies go to town and sit around and knit, and I get these beautiful hats and scarves to hand out in the community. But if you have specific donations, just send me an email and we'll figure it out.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Angela. Ruby, I see your hand is raised. Please go ahead and
Oh.
unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for this. My questions for the constable, you mentioned that there'll be meetings, those bi-monthly meetings for businesses with the BIA, which is fantastic. Is that just the downtown BIA, the uptown BIA, or what if business events?
It's for every business BIA.
Oh, great.
investment.
Okay.
It's for everybody. We
Okay,
wanted to have this
perfect.
forums for specifically for business. It's going to be the business community forum, and it's coming. We just managed to nail down that we have an inspector participating with us. So it's
Perfect.
very much in its infancy, but we will communicate that through Jen, through emails. So it is in our horizon for the future.
Oh, perfect. So it's any business in the city.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. That's great. I don't see any other hands, so I think we'll carry on, but do feel free to hang on to your questions until the end of our next section here.
Well, now the question is as business owners and as community members, that really difficult task of building rapport and engaging with our vulnerable persons is sometimes very scary and very daunting. And I can say that not only as a police officer, but also say that as a woman. When I was asked to do this position, it never been done with our police agency before, and it hasn't really been done in a lot of other communities. It was a little out of the box thinking, and I wasn't sure where to begin. So I put my best foot forward. And in the last 2 years that I've done this, these are some of the things that I've used in engaging with our community, and I'm hopefully helpful for you. When I go out in the community, I'm only known as Camille or Constable Camille. I don't give my last name, and I only know my clientele by their first name. It's meant to be personable, engaging. I provide a non-judgmental approach. I always give positives in the morning. I am the happy ray of sunshine when I say good morning in the morning. I offer them validation if they say it's been a cold night, and I agree that it's been a cold night. I have active listening skills. I communicate the concerns that we have with our community and our business owners and our residents. You know, maybe they want them to clean up the tent, and we need to be responsible, and businesses and our residents have a right to feel safe in our community. They also have a right to have a business. So I try and balance that communication of addressing their concerns and our concerns to work together and engage in rapport. I set very firm boundaries and limits with them on things that I can and won't do, but I always offer them that support. I always engage in providing an opportunity to either go find a bed for the day or to go get a cup of coffee sometimes, because some of them have been out in the cold for a long time. I make referrals to housing and to our support workers in the community. And things for you sometimes when dealing with our vulnerable population, I understand it can be very scary, and sometimes it can be very emotional. So some of the things that the most important thing to do is to provide what is known as an emotional and physical out. So I don't stand directly in front of a vulnerable person. I stand off to the side. It's called a triangulation off to the side. You need to provide that opportunity that if they need to have a physical or emotional exit, they can take that by stepping to the side. If you're standing square up to them straight on, it becomes threatening and engaging for some of them. I often try and match my posture. If they are seating, I try and go down on one knee, but I leave enough space between them as well. If they are standing, I do not sit. We try and have that engagement eye to eye. I also am aware that within our Indigenous population that meeting eye to eye can be very difficult for cultural issues, in particular with residential schools. I always try and make sure that I'm engaging with them outside arm's length. Some of our clientele have health issues, and particularly with COVID, we need to stay 6 meters apart. So I always am very clear that I wear a mask, you wear a mask, even when we're outside sometimes. And I stay outside that arm's reach, so for it's their safety and my safety. If you're in a store, I encourage you to use barriers. If you're standing behind a counter, stand behind the counter so you have that physical barrier between you and that person. If there's a chair in there, please use that chair as a physical barrier, not pick it up, use it in a threatening manner, but to provide that visual barrier space. And like I said, make sure that you always have open and either physical or psychological exits for this individual. Often our clientele are engaged always in a struggle to survive emotionally and physically. So we want to provide them that exit all the time because they live on that existence of survival all the time. Other things that we look for when dealing with our vulnerable clientele with de-escalations, we always keep our hands visible and down with an open, engaging posture. We also move very slowly. Many of our clientele are poly substance abusers, so they often have drugs on board or alcohol on board. So we're dealing with somebody with a questionable level of consciousness. We never make sudden large movements. We always look in their eyes to see that we are engaged and that we're there for them. We always use confirming gestures, making sure our body posture matches the words that come out of our mouth. And sometimes even for me, you need to take that deep breath and talk slowly and engage in positive self-talk that it's going to be okay. And I don't necessarily have backup, but for yourself, you need to make sure that yourself and your staff are safe. Are we ensuring that if you have young workers in your establishment, are they have another staff member with them? Do they have the skill set? Do they have an emergency plan should be necessary? And we don't necessarily want to leave our employees alone late at night dealing with issues with some of our vulnerable persons. This is my thank you, and this is my opportunity for you to ask any question that you want. I mean, this is a conversation of great importance to me, but I also, this is important to you, and I want you to ask and feel safe that you can ask any question possible.
Please go ahead, Lily. I see your raised hand.
Thanks. So I'm with the farmers market, and we have a lot of homeless people who are coming through Tipperary Park, just because, you know, it's a public park and a traffic route for people.
Mhm.
And a lot of the time we don't have like situations where we feel like it's police worthy or anything like that, but we'll have issues where people will maybe just not understand the use of space and how the space is being used by everyone else. And so we might try to like offer direction or something like that. Like we had an incident where we were cleaning up at the end of the day. We had a lot of vehicles moving around, and we had a gentleman wandering through the middle of the moving vehicles. And so we were trying to ask him to stay on the sidewalk and things like that. And I guess I'm wondering if you have any tips about having just like sharing pieces of information with people who might not necessarily be, I don't know, as alert. We just want to make sure that they're staying safe and that we're able to pass that information to them and like communicate with them effectively.
Just be honest and say, hey buddy, I use the word, hey buddy, it's not safe for you to be here. Can you come off the road? Because we don't want you to get hit by a car. Something as simple as that. You know, it's engaging, it's endearing, it's, you know, addresses the issue, but provides it in a positive tone. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, and if that does not work, then what's like the next step?
Well, we do have a Project Allies, and if it's during the day, and I'll get Jen to go back to the slide, Project Allies. Purpose Society runs Project Allies, and what Project Allies is they have individuals with lived experience or experience dealing with our high-risk clientele. If you contact Project Allies, they will come out and have a chat with that person from the perspective of, I've been there and done that, and try and find a resolution with that person, talking to them at their level.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you might even want to invite them out proactively to maybe sort of one of your next markets, even if nobody specifically does the problem that you're highlighting right now. You know, you can invite them to come out proactively to just sort of, you know, be there and be a resource, and also give you some tips as well.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions or scenarios that they're looking for some information on? Go ahead, Angela.
Yes, I do want to ask a question, but I want to make sure I don't take up all the questions. So I'm willing to leave it until somebody else comes up.
Oh, no, please go right ahead. It's okay.
Oh, okay. Yes, we do have some excellent farmers markets and craft markets and stuff here in New Westminster. It's absolutely fantastic. But I was thinking not long ago, I was asked to take a look at the market on the downtown east side. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. And it runs similar to our markets here. And I was just wondering for Constable Camille and Val, if that's ever something that has ever come up here. I took a look at it for 2 days and decided, no, this was not where I wanted to go in terms of helping. So I was just wondering if there's ever any talk about that here in New West.
I'm not sure what you're asking. Like, are you talking about the market that's down on First Avenue in Vancouver?
No. This one is right downtown on the east side, right on Hastings. It's a market.
Are you talking about the folks that sell used stuff on the streets? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, but it's organized. It's actually under a tent, and it's actually organized, and it's funded by the city of Vancouver.
I don't think we have anything like that under the horizons at all. That would be something for city legislative services and licensing, I'm thinking.
So typically when we have a special event here in the city, it's often that it's a nonprofit organization who's looking to put on an event, or potentially a business, I guess. So our special events division would be more than happy to talk about that if that's something that you were considering putting on. Some of the concerns might be current COVID protocols, of course, whether or not streets needed to be shut down, whether or not, there was tents being erected, and insurance concerns. So there's definitely probably an appetite in our special events. You can actually email them at specialevents@newwestcity.ca. And they actually have a really great how to host an event package that they've put together that does have a lens of how to do that with COVID protocols in mind. As something that the city would provide, I'm feeling fairly confident that we don't currently have any resources that would be available to host that. So it would be something that we would expect a nonprofit partner to do, and we would help them put it on in the community by, helping them find a suitable location and making sure they knew what kind of insurance they required.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Angela, for the question. Quinn, go ahead. I see your hand raised.
Hi, this is Jamie, just also sitting here. I have 2 questions. One of them is really quick and easy. It's just for Constable Camille. I was just wondering if your email, by chance you were mentioning, send you an email if people were interested in finding out about, like somebody asked earlier, donating to your van.
It's not there.
Just curiosity about that. Like we also work at a local business, at a restaurant that is constantly composting plenty of foodstuffs at the end of night. So would be interested to follow up on that if an email was, if I can catch that. So that was my first question. Maybe that's something that's coming at the end of the presentation.
Are you talking about donating food to our community, vulnerable community? Is that what you're looking at, rather than ending up in the landfill?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
So the person you need to contact for that is actually the Union Gospel Mission. So the Union Gospel Mission is located at 680 Clarkson Street in New West. And if you contact Bill Wong, who is the director of the Union Gospel Mission, they actually have a program for restaurants from downtown Vancouver, because the Union Gospel Mission is Lower Mainland wide, where they do that. So please contact the Union Gospel Mission, and it will end up not in a landfill and on the plates of people who really need it.
And Quinn, I'll make sure that you get Bill Wong's contact information after this.
Thank you.
Nice.
And what was your second question?
Yeah, so my second question is working in a restaurant close to the New Westminster SkyTrain, which I would say is a pretty high traffic hub for people that live with homelessness in New Westminster. Certainly something that we experience is plenty of vulnerable people looking to come in and use the washroom. So it's kind of a constant thing. We don't really have hard and fast rules on it. We just play it by ear. Like generally we let people come in and use the washroom. Sometimes we have to say no, because there, of course, have been plenty of problems that we deal with regularly on that. Generally, we have to check the washrooms afterwards, because sometimes people will come in and use drugs in our washrooms, and then we need to make sure that we're cleaning everything up appropriately, because there's going to be kids using the washrooms in the same time frame. So just curious about insight on that.
So insight into the drug usage or using the bathroom.
No,
There's
yeah,
two
just
different things there. So in regards to bathrooms, the city has been very ambitious, and we now have a portable toilet in Hayek Square that is available for everybody to use. And there's a long lens to look for a more permanent solution, whether it be a standalone loo situation that we've seen in other communities. So that is on the horizon. As well as for drug usage in the community, we do have an overdose prevention site that is located at 40 Begbie Street. And it encourages individuals to get their drugs tested. It provides safe consumption and harm reduction supplies to our community, but they only open from 3:30 in the afternoon till 10:30 at night. The overdose prevention site just opened in April of this year. We are hoping for funding from Fraser Health to expand the hours of our overdose prevention site.
okay.
Do you have a sharps container in your bathroom?
You're asking.
I'm asking you, do you have a sharps container in your business's
Absolutely,
bathroom?
we do not.
So
We do
that's
not.
something that to also consider. Many people who are needle drug users, they're kind of used to sharps containers, and so if you have a sharps container in your bathroom, that might be something that helps reduce the strain on the workers having to deal with any paraphernalia that's left behind.
Okay. We are somewhat close to Hayek Square, and I was just wondering, like, what is it? Is it one? Like, is it one toilet at Hayek Square?
Currently, it's one portable toilet at Hayek Square. There's also other portable toilets. There's one in Uptown, right by what's called the Telus Plaza, which a lot of people don't know what that is, but it's that little sort of brick plaza area that's roughly at Princess Street and 6th Street. So there is a portable toilet there as well. There's also obviously all of the city parks toilets, which are open dawn to dusk. So all of those toilets that are sort of permanent washroom facilities are there. River Market, although they are a private business, River Market is often open to the public to use their washrooms, and they have a strategy in place for dealing with vulnerable people who are trying to sort of seek shelter in the bathroom or are using drugs as well. So they often, because they have a fair number of bathrooms, they often are kind of considered a public washroom, even though they are a private business. And like Camille said, there is sort of a long range vision for a permanent toilet as opposed to a porta potty, because porta potties, just by their very nature, tend to be a little bit abused, just because they're, you know, a portable toilet and they're plastic and that kind of thing. So there is a long range vision for something that's a bit more permanent and a little bit more vandal proof, so to speak. So that's definitely something that's on our radar. There, as a part of the downtown livability strategy, there is also some work to kind of consider kind of a bigger picture of public washrooms, not just for people who are homeless or people who are vulnerable, but also for seniors, you know, people who have different abilities, people who have health concerns that, you know, they need to use the washroom. The Crohn's and Colitis Association of Canada has a pretty good program as well. There is also, I see a comment in the chat, there is lacking public washrooms for vulnerable folks around City Hall for sure. While City Hall is open, it is always acceptable for people to use the washrooms at City Hall. And we do have a number of portable toilets at parks, and although they aren't necessarily where people are congregating, so there's one at Hume Park, there's one at Moody Park, I believe, and there's a couple of others as well. So it's certainly something on our radar, but right now there is only one active portable toilet in Hayek Square.
Okay. Do you have any more information you could share about, you mentioned like the River Market businesses that they have a strategy in place. Do you know what that strategy looks like?
Well, their strategy, as far as I know, and I mean, I can follow up with Alice Kavanaugh, who's the property manager at River Market, to get some more information and see if she's open to sharing it with everyone here so we can have a bit of peer-to-peer learning. But their strategy does involve their regular building maintenance staff just kind of regularly going through and having a look. And then if something is amiss or if there's a person that's in there, a person who is trained in de-escalation is the one that's approaching whoever it is and asking them to leave or giving them the opportunity to finish up and then go. So they kind of just have taken a similar compassionate approach as well, but they're quite firm about what their rules are. And I think that firm and consistent stance has really helped in terms of setting a tone for the folks who are regularly coming and using the washrooms. It's only available when they're open, and they're not open, you know, late at night. So that does help reduce some of the strain on their washroom use. But definitely I can follow up with them and get back to you with any tips that they've got to share too.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Lily, I see that you made a note around what's the best way to support a permanent public toilet, or many of them in the cities, especially if that's something that's coming as a position from one of our valued partners like the New Westminster Farmers Market, would be a letter. We would love to have letters that support public washrooms in the city. You can send them to clerks@newscity.ca, and that email address does go to Mayor and Council, or you're welcome to just send it to me and I'll make sure it gets into the record of when we start doing some kind of bigger work around a permanent solution. So I don't see any pressing questions right now. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over to this next slide to talk about our future small business education topics. So we did mention that there are a few coming up, and some of those small business topics will touch on various issues. So the opioid crisis and helping during an overdose. This is specifically for business owners and understanding what they can do. We'll likely have some naloxone training available. I'm just working out the details of that right now. We're also looking at some crime prevention through design. So that might be, you know, how you set up your store. That might be how you, you know, whether or not you put a certain kind of door, that kind of idea. And so we'll be offering that one is likely one of our next ones that we'll be working on. We'll also be working on targeting hardening for loss prevention, meaning, you know, don't put the very expensive things right beside the door kind of idea. So that'll be some specific strategies about how to make sure that those sort of grab type or smash and grab type of crimes don't necessarily happen. I'm also working on a session that's specific for technology. So I know a lot of small business owners will purchase cameras or other technology solutions for safety for their business, but they don't necessarily know the right way to set them up or what angles are best. And so a lot of times video footage that's captured isn't very useful in solving crime. So we're going to work with one of our other officers to look at what some of the technology solutions are and some recommendations, as well as things like blocks and other pieces that are sort of new. And one other sort of topic that we're looking at is around staff training and being prepared. Right now with the workplace, a lot of the folks who are working in frontline industries tend to be a little bit younger. That is a bit of a generalization, but a lot of them tend to be a little bit younger, and some of them may not be super experienced and might be nervous or worried about you know, what they have to put up with. And so we'll be looking at some staff training and being prepared opportunities, specifically as it relates to working with, you know, working to prevent crime or working to make sure that vulnerable folks aren't impacting them. So in terms of follow-up for this session, the downtown livability strategy that I mentioned is available on this website, this downtown livability shortened URL. Today's materials, any of the worksheets that we mentioned, contact information, and as well as a recording of this will all be available. I'll send it through the Eventbrite link first, and then it will be made available on the city's website. And I'll also share it in the Invest New West newsletter. You can email me at info@investnewwest.ca if you have questions. That's a generic inbox, or you can send it to me at jarbo@newwestcity.ca. You're also welcome to sign up to the Invest New West newsletter. It goes out every 2 weeks. It's specific for businesses. And I put in all of the educational opportunities, any opportunities like grants, you know, that kind of stuff. Camille has put her email address in the chat. So for anyone who's looking to get in touch with her, you're welcome to jot that down. But I will also follow it up in the Eventbrite follow-up. I think that is about everything. I'm going to say thank you, and I'm going to stop recording, and then I'll stop sharing so that way if anyone is uncomfortable being on screen, they don't have to be.